Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm going to do a video on the most powerful strikers in each UFC weight class, and to get us going, I have a lineup of the most prolific KO artists in the UFC. Alright, we're going to go and start with Flyweight. We're going to talk about my fighters that I've selected here. We're going to go with Joshua Van, Charles Johnson, Manel Kape, Kaikara France, and Ode Osbourne. And that last pick might surprise some of you, but I'll discuss him first, sure. He's been dropping people lately, and I'm definitely being heavily affected by recency bias in putting him on this list, but he always has a very big moment that usually involves him hurting or dropping someone, and then he either capitalizes on it or he doesn't. Last time he did, but 2 fights ago, I think that he gets a mention on this list because Ode Osbourne, he is just a dehydrated bantamweight. Whatever he does in there, he's going to be hitting harder than the guy that he's fighting most of the time. Kaikara France, he fights like he's in the pub. I don't think that he'll give Pantoja issues per se, but against the Steve Versegs of the world, he's proven that he'll knock those types of fighters out. And all throughout his career, he's scoring drops over different fighters. Before Kaikara France got subbed in his fight with Brandon Royval, he had dropped him in that fight. This guy does have some pretty decent power on him. He comes from a good gym. His boxing is very measured. Cody Garbrandt, he spilled him twice before that they called that fight. So we've seen his power on display on numerous occasions. Moving forward, he is a pretty entertaining prospect. The same thing goes for Manel Kape, even though I used to sleep on him back in the day. Back-to-back wins over Bruno Silva and Asu Amabayev, these wrestlers who are supposed to just get him up out of there, makes me think that he would have at least won a decision against Muhammad Mokaev. Granted, he didn't break his toe. He very clearly dislocated his toe, and there was something wrong with his foot pretty early on in the fight, and that was the reason why he underperformed. He's a decent fighter, more than decent fighter, with very powerful boxing, and he does put the hurt on these guys. So him going into a fight with Brandon Royval, the power that he possesses on the feet as a striker does pose serious threats for Brandon Royval to the point where he may not want to initiate in any of those exchanges and may seek to wrestle very early. Joshua Van is my favorite fighter in the UFC right now. I alternate favorite fighters very rapidly, but right now it's Joshua Van. Even though he had just recently been stopped by Charles Johnson. Charles Johnson is another dehydrated bantamweight. Joshua Van's shot placement is very good, and that's what makes him dangerous. He's very good at mixing it up with his boxing. He boxes like a boxer. It suits his style very well because he's pretty decent at kickboxing, and his wrestling defense is good so he can keep on standing and fighting on the feet. He doesn't very much seek to go to the ground, but whenever he does, he has pretty intelligent defense to do things like get off the cage or scramble so he can get back to his feet. I like Joshua Van. I think he's a very well put together fighter. And if you put him in there with an average bantamweight or even a guy who's hanging out in the top 15 who just shouldn't be there because there's very little depth in this division, Joshua Van probably knocks him out and puts on a show while doing it. So that's the reason why I think that he's one of the most powerful strikers in this division. Charles Johnson I had to mention just because he was the one who did knock out Joshua Van. He just had a fight with Ramazan Timurov. Ramazan Timurov was the one who made that fight boring. If you want to be like, oh yeah, well, Charles Johnson lost his last fight. The reason why Ramazan Timurov was just on a bike running from Charles Johnson the whole time was because he was afraid of the power. He spent the whole time evading and clinching. And that was because he didn't want to get knocked out and embarrassed by Charles Johnson. Timurov was undefeated, so he was fighting like he didn't want to lose that I don't think that was really in Charles Johnson's hands, the fact that he didn't want to engage. He's a stand-up fighter. So yeah, those are going to be my picks for Flyweight. We're going to talk about Bantamweight now. 4 fighters to discuss. We have Sean O'Malley, Davison Figueiredo, Marcus McGee, and Ayman Zahabi. Ayman Zahabi, as we discussed on the Dricus du Plessis style fighters list, he's just a freak of nature. This guy cannot be stopped. You cannot contain him. Against Jose Aldo, I'm very afraid for what he'll do to Junior. I might be misplacing these worries. I've been wrong before. I think that Ayman Zahabi is probably going to put the hurt on our brother. So he's definitely one of the most powerful strikers in this division. Same goes for Marcus McGee. It just stinks that Marcus McGee, he at least looks pretty old in the face. I think that he is approaching 40 though. So it doesn't really work for him. But he has dynamite in his gloves whenever he fights. It's ridiculous, the amount of power that he can output into the shots that he throws. Against Johnny Martinez, on compromised leg, switching stances, not being able to get full power off into his shots, he was still hurting Johnny Martinez. and he's a very dangerous striker. Everything he throws is just super explosive. This is Michael Chandler with fight IQ. That's the way that he fights. The same type of power in those shots where you're like, wow, how did he just hit him so hard? But he's able to string together combinations for longer than Michael Chandler can, and he doesn't really overreach, so he can combo for a long time without punching himself out. Marcus McGee's fights are very fun to watch. I think that he is definitely one of the most powerful strikers in this division. Davison Figueiredo, this is another very powerful striker. He did drop Peter Yan. He dropped Chito Vera, which, how are you doing that? We've seen Chito Vera take some really nasty shots from the last person that we'll talk about for this weight class. The fact that Davison Figueiredo is able to achieve the accolade of dropping half of the fighters he's able to knock down is pretty astounding. But it just makes me sad for the fact that he can't actually finish these fights. But he is a very powerful striker. I feel like most people approach matchups with him very tentatively, so they don't really put themselves at much of a risk to get knocked out cold. He just ends up still scoring drops off of people with shots that don't look like they could drop them because he is a very strong fighter. Just like Sean O'Malley, who needs to get the belt back so he can put on more fights and get cool knockouts. Moving up towards the title, yes, there were tomato cans, but he was sparking them out cold. Even in his title win against Aljamain Sterling, that was a very electric finish. He got that one done, and it was a McGregor-esque knockout. Different fighters throughout history since McGregor, and even before him too, have scored that same knockout where they're fading back, and they plant and they throw the cross, and it just beams whoever they're, and it sleeps whoever it lands on. So you have to be a special fighter with very good coordination and a lot of power in order to land the shot and to knock someone out with it, because you can touch someone with a shot moving backwards, but generating power to knock someone out off of the back foot, as these fighters have demonstrated the ability to do, is something that's very hard to come by. So whenever I do encounter it, I take notice. I think these four are definitely the most powerful fighters in Bantamweight right now as we speak. Alright, the next division that we're going to discuss is going to be Featherweight. We have Top Toro, Diego Lopez, Gene Silva, Aaron Pico, which is a hard maybe, and Dan Ige. We also have Josh Emmett at the end there. That's a casual test. If you didn't recognize him, then you just aren't a hardcore, I guess. Ilia Topuria has knocked out Max Holloway, and before then knocked out Volkanovski, and is on a concurrent run of doing these two things. Josh Emmett is unfinishable, so I mean, it is what it is. But before then, it was Ryan Hall and then Bryce Mitchell. They were getting subbed and also knocked out. So Ilia Topuria is a serious threat as far as power goes on the feet. He is the most powerful striker in this division by a wide margin, I believe. Next, we have Diego Lopez, and I keep harping on this, but I really did think he was going to knock out Volk, and I was super surprised by the fact that he didn't get that done. And that was just me lowballing the current champion of the world, even though, in my eyes, I still view Ilia Topuria as the true 145 champion. I don't know how anyone else feels about that, but that's actually the featherweight champion. But Diego Lopez, he's a good puncher. And in the clinch, he can generate a lot of power throwing very short, as he demonstrated against Sadiq Youssef. Great finishes. He knocked out Brian Ortega, and he woke him up with 2 different punches. That's whenever I convinced myself that this guy had the potential to knock out Volk. And I was wrong, so we learned. But I still do believe that he is a very powerful striker, among one of the most powerful in the division. I could say the same comfortably about Gene Silva. I don't really know the full range of his capabilities, as he's not been tested to the same extent as Diego Lopez has, being that Diego Lopez has already fought Volk, and Gene Silva has just earned a considerable ranking in the division, so he will be match made against the top contenders, but right now we just don't know how he places against them. Super crafty, unique stance as well. He doesn't stand like most other fighters that I watch whenever he fights. He has a very interesting approach towards countering. He's good at kickboxing too. His wrestling offense with submissions is very good, and also his defense is very good, so he can stay off of his back and the cage, which is very important if you're going to be a powerful striker. You also have to have the wrestling defense in order to keep yourself safe from grappling, because that is going to be your largest threat. Gene Silva is more than sound in his grappling defense, and I don't think that that will be something that he'll get exposed for in future matches made. Aaron Pico, he just signed with the UFC, hasn't fought in the promotion yet. It's very risky for me to put him on this list, but I've seen a lot of his clips, and it is him just blicking up people and knocking them out cold. So we'll go with a hard maybe for Aaron Pico. He may be one of the most powerful strikers in this division, but it just hasn't been proven yet. Bellator does give us the worst champions. Whenever they come to the UFC, so far at least, Bellator champions haven't been doing that well. They've been getting a lot of spotlight, and they've just been selling their opportunities to fight with high-ranked UFC talent. So we'll see how he does. I'm curbing my expectations for Aaron Pico. What he has on tape does display that he has the potential to be someone that we identify as one of the most powerful strikers in the division once he does start fighting in the UFC. The next person that we're going to discuss is going to be Dan Ige. Super game fighter. His punches hurt. Dan Ige knocked out Gavin Tucker. That was a good fight. He sparked his ass. It was great. Dan Ige is a heavy puncher. People know this. He has more rocked moments than knockdowns, though. Unless he does earn a knockoff KO with his boxing, most of the times his TKOs are either standing TKOs or like last time it was a pretty bad stoppage. That was nothing more than a rocked moment. The ref should have definitely let that develop more. There was a video of the gesture that the ref did to explain to Sean Woodson why he stopped the fight, and it just looks so stupid. What did you guys think about that stoppage, Sean Woodson versus Dan Ige? I think that Dan Ige is a very powerful striker, and that's the reason why Sean Woodson was staying very measured the whole time, is because he was trying to prevent what happened to him in that last round. So you guys can tell me what you think in the comment section about this stoppage, but we're going to talk about Josh Emmett. We really need to discuss nothing more. Josh Emmett, he put an out of order sign over Bryce Mitchell. Josh Emmett hit Bryce Mitchell so hard that he could feel the presence of the painter. Josh Emmett hit Bryce Mitchell so hard that he sent him to the beaches of Normandy. He woke up there. And then he fired the MG42 for a little bit, and then he came back to the arena. And he had a bunch of stories to tell from the time that he spent serving. Josh Emmett hit Bryce Mitchell so hard that he almost fixed whatever chromosomal imbalance was going on in there. Yeah, Josh Emmett taxed Bryce Mitchell. That was, I don't even want to make jokes about it. It was bad. That was one of the worst knockouts I've ever seen in my life. Alright, going on to lightweight, we have Uptoro again reappearing. Makhachev, Joel Alvarez is here. Dustin Poirier will get a mention. Hoofi, Ignacio Bahamundes, and Paddy Pimblett. And you have to give me a reason why out of all of these different fighters that are listed here, Ilia Topuria doesn't knock all of them out. It's crazy to think that there's a fighter that you can just safely trust to be like, yeah, he's going to knock all of these people out. And he would. So it's a good time to be a fan of MMA if you support Ilia Topuria. And if you're hating on him, then you're going to watch the fight anyways, and you're going to enjoy the outcome, retrospectively at least, if he does end up becoming one of the sport's greats. Deep down, I think that's kind of what we all want, is one of these fighters to break away from the rest and just start breaking all of the records that all of the old greats have set. So I think Ilia Topuria is a candidate who you can safely trust to do this. If any of the fighters of this era had a chance, I think Ilia Topuria is a pretty safe person to bet on to become the next all-time great of the sport. Islam Makhachev is nearing this with a couple more defenses. He is a very powerful striker, but he does have his moments where he looks pretty silly, like slipping against Renato. It did look like he got cleanly dropped for a second whenever I was watching it live. Joel Alvarez against other rising contenders like Elvis Brenner, and they had him fight Drakkar Klose for some reason. Knocked both of those guys out, and it was easy for him. So he's definitely up there whenever it comes to power. He's super tall too, so it's really not much of a surprise how he's able to hit so hard. He's very big for the weight class. Dustin Poirier has been a mainstay of 155 since he moved up from featherweight. Very powerful striker. If you are not at a certain level of boxing or competency with your defense, he will knock you out. I hope it is against someone he can knock out, but at the very least, I know that it will be an interesting fight against anyone because he is one of the most powerful strikers in the division. Mauricio Hoofi is also someone you can say the same about. He does this with his kicks, though. His kicks are something that make him a very lethal weapon. His arsenal of kicks, his boxing is also very good too, but he's not necessarily the most powerful with his hands. Maybe it's that lawn top chin that I'm sleeping on, but that fight really made me think that King Green had a chance of weathering an early storm if it was a flurry of punches that was coming at him, and even dealing with the kicks as well, while moving defensively and then dragging the fight on into a later round. But he just throws a wheel kick immediately and that's it, so I guess we go back to the drawing board. So yes, he has to be one of the most powerful strikers in the division. Ignacio Bahamundes is another fighter who I will mention is one of the most powerful strikers in the division. Very long and rangy. He has good timing and distance management as well. He landed that same Conor McGregor sequence with the fading away, planting, and then throwing the cross on Manuel Torres like 3 or 4 times. He has head kick knockouts, wheel kick knockouts. He's not afraid to throw these big strikes that may leave him in compromising positions because he knows that he'll probably land. And if he does, then the fight is over. So Ignacio Bahamundes is very fun to watch fight because of the confidence he displays in himself whenever he is striking. I think that he'll go far if he can continue to make the weight. And I think that he could do well at 170 if he can put on some more mass. Paddy Pimblett is the last fighter who we'll talk about, and he's certified at this point, man. He's a very powerful striker. He has very good low kick offense. His boxing is pretty sharp too. His defense leaves a little bit to be desired, but he does have a lock-in genetic to where if he does get caught and it doesn't knock him out, he's pretty locked in afterwards. I hope that next time he can come out switched on like he was after he'd been caught cleanly by Michael Chandler and also kicked in the balls by him too, because he looked very locked in after those two things happened. He has drop sequences against Tony Ferguson. He was doing work against King Green in that fight. I think that's why Bobby Green took the shot, is because he was feeling the pressure in the boxing. Paddy Pimblett is a pretty strong fighter, and it translates to him being very powerful with his strikes. His kicks are also very notable. I think that he's a very good kickboxer, and that's where most of his power is. The next division that we're going to talk about is welterweight. And there's only really 3 candidates for the most powerful strikers in this division. It's Buckley, JDM, and Carlos Prates. The rest are grappler hybrids, and most of them prefer to grapple than strike, it seems like. And especially whenever they fight each other, they try to see who's better at grappling. Buckley is down to just bang it out with whoever. You can categorize all of these fighters by them preferring stand-up over any other method of approaching a fight. Carlos Prates has freakish power for his frame and his build. It doesn't look like he's going to hit as hard as he does. He basically looks like a fairer-skinned Neil Magny from a body type perspective, and he hits so much harder. He hits about as hard as Buckley does whenever you factor in timing and the precision of the shot. He's collapsing lungs with these knees, man. He's hitting people on the chin whenever they're not expecting to be hit. His timing is so awkward, and the power and explosiveness and burst, whenever he moves, it ends the fight. So Carlos Prates is for sure one of the most powerful strikers in this division. The same thing can be said about JDM. They're building up Randy Brown because he's fighting this weekend. JDM knocked that guy out. And whenever I do watch those Randy Brown highlights, because they're amazing in themselves, I just ask myself, how good is JDM? And he's very good, because it doesn't stop with the boxing. He finished his last fight by a knee. It was a knee that he countered a takedown with. And his kicks are pretty decent as well. He does well with low kicks, good wrestling offense so he can stay with the striking. But the boxing really is his money maker. And he does very well in the stand-up due to the fact that he knows exactly what he's doing with his hands. And seeing him match made with these 2 other fighters will be a good show, guaranteed. Buckley is the last fighter who we're going to talk about for 170. The thing that makes him so powerful is his agility. His frame is more muscular, and he's shorter than the other guys as well, but he's a lot faster than them for some reason. He moves faster than JDM and Carlos Prates. Even though Carlos Prates is very long and wiry and built like a traditional Anderson Silva-style kickboxer, because he is a lot like Anderson Silva, Buckley, in a very weird way, is still faster than Carlos Prates. And it's not going to make sense based off of just looking at the picture if you haven't watched either of them fight. But the way that Buckley times his entries and the way that he explosively enters range to just get off boxing, single shots too. Single shots. And then he exits range. He's like a lightning bolt. He closes distance with the best of them. He has one of the fastest entries with his lead hook or overhand I've ever seen out of this division. Buckley is one of the most powerful strikers, and it doesn't stop there either. He's lobbing up head kicks. He's doing all types of things in the octagon, throwing low kicks. All of his offense is significant, and he can find finishes too, which other guys that we've mentioned before on the list, most of them are finishers, but Buckley is definitely a finisher. Buckley is calling for Ian Gary, granted he wins against Carlos Prates, and Buckley knocks that guy out. And that's going to be my early prediction for that if it does end up going that way. In middleweight, we have some fun fighters to choose from. We have the champion Dricus, Nasruddin Imavov, Joe Pyfer, middleweight Venom Page, and Marco Tulio. Dricus has absolutely absurd power, great kickboxing. Dricus just fights like the cosmic silverback from Dead Ops Arcade and Black Ops 1. Nasruddin Imavov is a very good puncher. Knockouts over Israel Adesanya and Jared Cannonier back-to-back. He's doing very well for himself right now, looking like an absolute menace. Joe Pyfer, the same thing. It sucks that he couldn't fight against Kelvin Gastelum the last time that he was supposed to show. But whenever he does come back, I'm expecting a big knockout over him. He got a very good finish over Marc-Andre Barriault. And this was sometime after he had lost to Jack Hermanson, who schooled him and made him look like he didn't deserve to be in the UFC. But Jack Hermanson has this tendency to do this thing to upcoming contenders, so you cut him a break. MVP against Shar Bullet looked very dangerous. That right hand and left hand, whenever he would switch stances and shoot in with that cross, it was hitting Shar Bullet very hard, and that's a very dangerous punch, and it makes his opponent second guess every single time that he's chest to chest with them, even at a neutral distance where they feel like they can't be hit because MVP is so fast. So the thing that makes him very powerful is the speed and the added weight behind the punches. Marco Tulio has demonstrated that he fights like a flyweight, as I've mentioned before. Super powerful striker. And it's damage over time that he accumulates because he is touching you, but it's with big and significant strikes, like head kicks that are chipping away at your guard, or body shots that are landing flush on your organs. So the precision, the accuracy, the timing, the speed on Marco Tulio, the power, it's all very serviceable. And I'm using that word as an understatement because he is very powerful and among the most powerful in the division. And I'm super excited to see how far he'll go. Light heavyweight, we have a few people to choose from as well. Poatan is a no-brainer mention. Yuri Prochazka has definitely done enough to be recognized as one of the most powerful strikers at 205. Dominic Reyes is going to be a new addition to someone I'd consider to be one of the most powerful strikers. We're about time for that rematch and maybe one more win for Dominic Reyes. Volkan Ozdemir is mainly beaten with wrestling just because he is such a good grappler. Volkan Ozdemir, very tidy boxing on him. Whenever I see him fight, I'm always nervous for the dude that he's fighting because I feel like he could go to sleep at any second. He'll knock you out and he'll check the Paddock Philippe. This is his emote, and that's pretty hard. So he's one of the most powerful strikers in the division. Been around for a while, but still pretty young. I think that there's still a lot of fun matches to be made with him just because he hits so damn hard. Just like Ming Yang Zhang, who's fighting this weekend against Anthony Smith. He is a very powerful striker, but one thing that I will say about him is that he does get hit a lot. So will Anthony Smith have an opportunity to land a big shot that has the potential to end the fight? Yes. But does Anthony Smith have the power to generate this shot? Probably not. But one concurrent theme that I've found going through Min Yang Zhang's footage is that he gets hit clean by everyone that he fights. Everyone that he fights tags him, and he staggers for a little bit, and then he usually just smiles and keeps on fighting. But there's going to be a guy who hits him, and he's not going to be able to do that. I'd like to see Min Yang Zhang fight Dominic Reyes after he knocks out Anthony Smith, as I predicted. And then afterwards, yeah, let's get that Reyes versus Prochazka rematch. And then we'll talk about a title shot afterwards for whoever can win that. If we can make it make sense for Yuri, too. But I mean, I feel like it always makes sense for Yuri because we know how he's coming all of the time. Yuri is a very fun and interesting fighter because he fights with his chin straight up in the air and he's throwing bombs the entire time that he's in the octagon. That's going to be our lineup for 205. Discussing our final division, and it's literally just Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall. Since there's no depth in this division, nobody else has the same level of striking as Tom Aspinall and Jon Jones from the level of defense and power output. Jon Jones outputs his power in a much different way than Tom Aspinall does, and mainly both of them are kind of grapplers. Tom Aspinall is more of a striker as he's demonstrated this weight class, but Jon Jones goes to his wrestling as he should. As a striker, Jon Jones has more than enough potency to end a fight at heavyweight. Mainly with his kicks will be the difference maker here in this weight class. Most of these fighters are not kickboxers and they don't really know how to defend certain kicks because they never get thrown at them, like spinning back kicks. So Jon Jones will have an advantage there against anyone that he fights for the fact that his arsenal is so unique. He's a very powerful fighter now that he is so heavy, and he was before too, even at 205. Tom Aspinall's 1-2 is what puts food on his family's table, and it's all he really needs, to be honest, because his jab and straight is so good. And he's trademarked this combo, this simple combo that all fighters throw. It's Tom Aspinall's, because he does it better than all of the rest of them. So this is going to be my pick for heavyweight. I didn't just coincidentally place these two fighters on the same slide. I've been thinking about watching this fight a lot lately. I think we might actually get Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev. I saw a tweet from some journalist who was talking about Islam is starting a training camp today. So Ilia Topuria had tweeted that his camp started. Maybe they're both training to fight each other. That's the best case scenario and what I'm hoping for. If you guys did stick around to this point, please like, comment, and subscribe. I'm going to get out of here. I will catch you in the next one.